It's time for Positively Kansas. Coming up, their little town lost its only grocery store, so the local school students stepped in to start their own. See how this new business is a win-win for everybody involved. Also, after years of detective work, this Derby man makes an amazing discovery about his uncle who served in World War II. In our Kansas Wild Edge report, see the dramatic struggle for life as a river level is lowered to repair a nearby lake. And by day, he's saving lives on the operating table. But by night, this Wichita surgeon has a whole other line of work that'll make you pop your cork. I'm Sierra Scott. A half hour of information and inspiration is coming your way on Positively Kansas.
Positively Kansas is brought to you in part by...
Before investing your hard-earned money, make sure your financial advisor understands your objectives. Mark Douglas, CFP, serving our community for over 20 years, providing customized financial solutions that focus on the individual.
Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Kansas serves more than 930,000 Kansans in various programs. Independent, member-owned. Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Kansas, an independent licensee of Blue Cross and Blue Shield Association, supports KPTS.
Program support provided by the F. Price Kosman Memorial Trust, Entrust Bank trustee, bringing you the Kansas Wild Edge segments on Positively Kansas.
It's been a growing problem over the past few decades. Small town grocery stores closing and leaving behind food deserts. But folks in a small Butler County town have come up with a rather creative idea. Could it be the solution for other communities as well? Chris Frank has the story.
The town of Leon in Butler County is a community of about 700. It's similar to so many small Kansas towns which don't have fully stocked grocery stores and are in what are described as food deserts. Now, a food desert is often defined as an area lacking access to nutritious, affordable food. But this is one food desert that's getting, if not an oasis in its midst, at least some relief for locals who are having to drive several miles for needed products.
Do you need us to help you with anything?
Do you guys have milk?
Yes, we do. We'll show you where that's at, Jonathan.
Okay.
The Blue Stem Mercantile store in Leon has milk for customers like Debbie Zogelman, who works in town.
Oh, all right. Thank you. I'd like, do I get it myself, Jonathan? You can. Okay.
Customers like Zogelman are enjoying the convenience of now being able to pick up needed things like milk. The nearest supermarkets are 12 miles away in Augusta or 13 miles away in El Dorado.
Well, every family wakes up and there's something that you don't have for a meal. So you could run to the store to get that milk for cereal, and it helps first thing in the morning.
First thing in the morning, as Zogelman says, or here in the middle of the afternoon.
I'm really excited about this coming in.
Why?
Because it gives a place to go to buy stuff like milk, things that we can't get other places. We have to go clear to Augusta. So I'm excited.
And this was kind of one of those ideas that popped up, that, a small grocery store.
It's an idea Blue Stem School Superintendent Joel Lovesey came up with.
We try to find a way to make school more relevant for our students.
Yeah. Lovesey and staff members were thinking of ways to broaden the students' education beyond the traditional classroom setting.
It just fit with the business class, the particular students we had, just a lot of things. It just made sense. And so this is a project that's been multiple years in the making, and it was a time that we just needed to take a leap of faith and just get it open.
On this day, special education teacher Amy Oltman brings in her students to work in the mercantile store.
TT, come here. You're going to take your jacket off and go hang it up in the back, okay? And make sure you can start washing the windows, okay?
Oltman says several of the Blue Stem teachers got involved to get the store open. She says the shop teacher built the tables in a Western theme to fit the building's decor.
My big picture goal is I'm never going to be able to be with them the rest of their lives. When they hit 18 or when they graduate their senior year, I'm gone. I hate that. Yes. That looks good.
I know it's not always good up, but...
Okay, I've got a great idea. You're gonna take the other ones and start them at the top, and we'll just like layer them. Does that sound good?
Altman says she wants her special education students to be able to list their work experience here on a resume, which could help them get work later.
And they can have some life skills to put on the resume so they're ready to go when they graduate.
They are starting out small. The number of products here hardly compares to most convenience stores, let alone a supermarket. But it's just the beginning, says Lovesey.
It's providing a need for the community, but at the same time, next year, when school rolls around in the fall, every single hour of the day that the store is open, we'll have a class down here.
Hello, Mr. Day.
Hey, Mr. Dale.
Mr. Dale.
The superintendent is hoping to get as many of the school's classes involved as possible. You already see here that the special education class students are involved, stacking shelves, cleaning, learning about retail work. Entrepreneur students will learn about running a team store and selling merchandise. Business classes will also be involved. Their logo was created by art students after approaching its design the same way an advertising agency might.
And we went back and critiqued, we narrowed it down, and they finally came up with this. They've since given this to our shop class, who has cut the metal designs on their plasma cam. They've given it to the other shop class, who did the woodworking.
So when we're done with chores, I have the bottles already made up.
Even these elementary students are indirectly involved.
Questions about the 2 Jersey calves.
This class is part of the Ag Academy. The school, with the help of students, raises chickens, goats, sheep, and cattle. The eggs these chickens lay are sold in the Blue Stem Mercantile. The cow you see behind me, well, it was raised by the Blue Stem Ag Academy students, but it's scheduled to soon go to the butcher, and its beef will then be sold in the Blue Stem Mercantile store there in Leon. Ag Academy teacher Barbara McCaffrey incorporates lessons from many disciplines to teach her students.
We call it a project-based learning program. It's hands-on. They actually, feed all the cattle, but they learn from experience. It's just not showing them a picture of cattle and all the different breeds. We teach them, they get to see them, touch them, hold them, and then we tell them everything that we know about them.
The school doesn't have the pressure of making a profit, but does want to break even.
And so breaking even allows us to provide merchandise at an affordable price. We're trying to not go above Dillon's. If we can buy it from Sam's and just a little markup, I can cover expenses, but I can provide a benefit to the community. And we're getting a whole back in return for the educational piece.
Lovesey says this gives a practical education to students they don't get in a classroom.
It's really that hands-on approach and you hate to say it working in public ed, but a majority of what we teach is irrelevant. But we know that now, and most people know when they learn from hands-on, they learn by doing.
Now, he's not saying do away with textbooks.
We can take what we're teaching in a textbook, and the application piece is right here for us.
Lovesey says one can liken the Blue Stem Mercantile to a school lab, where students take what's learned in a classroom and in textbooks and then apply it.
Oh, I've heard nothing but good. Nothing but good.
Customers are just happy to be able to get a few essential items locally.
It's a 15 to 20 minute drive to either Augusta or to El Dorado, so it's just so much handier to have a store in the vicinity of the school and town.
So you can think of the Blue Stem Mercantile as a store and learning center rolled into one old building. From Leon, this is Chris Frank for Positively Kansas.
The school received grants from Kansas State University to purchase equipment and stock the shelves to get the store up and running. A Derby chiropractor turns history detective as he uncovers new revelations about his uncle who died during World War II. The uncle was captured by the Japanese, and his life as a POW was shrouded in mystery until, as Jim Grayway explains, an unlikely series of events led to the truth.
Well, Bob Gage came to me with this story because he thought our viewers in particular would be fascinated. For years, he knew scant details about his uncle who served in World War II. But then...
This gentleman came to my office seeking care for his bad back.
More on that in a minute. First, here's the setup. The end of World War II was met with celebration and honors for the millions of American soldiers who returned home. But there was no such welcome for Lieutenant Bud Humphrey. Humphrey died a year before the war ended as a prisoner of war of the Japanese. The ship carrying him from the Philippines to Japan was torpedoed by an American sub. His nephew, Bob Gage of Derby, says that seemed to be the end of the story of his Uncle Bud.
It just wasn't spoken of. He was just forgotten.
Growing up, all that Gage knew was that he had had an uncle who was captured at Corregidor. And he never thought much about it until one day a man came into his chiropractic clinic for treatment. That man mentioned he had first injured his back at the fall of Corregidor during World War II.
He actually had been a prisoner of the Japanese and was captured when Corregidor fell. And I said, oh, I had an uncle who was at Corregidor. He said, well, what was his name?
The patient didn't recognize the name Bud Humphrey, but
he said, you just must find out about your uncle.
So the seed was planted. Gage began the quest to seek out the survivors of his uncle's unit and the POW camp where he was held in the Philippines. Over time, Gage learned that his uncle had been a hero, having risked his life to save many lives at Corregidor. And then this investigation hit the mother lode.
Finally connected with the daughter of his commanding officer. And it turns out that she occasionally would go to the National Archives and explore information there. She said, I have something I think would be of interest. There's a diary without a name on it. And this person mentioned he was going to go back to KU and get a master's degree. And he said something about Sis in Ottawa and something about Curdy, who was his girlfriend. And said, holy cow, we have discovered his, I get verklempt now and then, discovered his diary.
That's right. A diary Lieutenant Humphrey kept while he was imprisoned in the Philippines somehow survived the war, likely buried in the ground before Humphrey boarded the ship for Japan. Someone found it and turned it into the National Archives, but nobody knew whose it was. The original was apparently lost, but a photocopy sat for decades in a file with no name until now.
It's just been a remarkable trail to follow and discover all these interesting things.
The entries cover 2 years and 4 months of Humphrey's hellacious captivity.
Not long after his capture, he made an entry on May 31st of 1942. At sunset, the 4 prisoners who jumped the fence the other night were caught to go to their last rites. They stood in their newly dug graves and faced a firing squad. Got a pair of old patched but whole work shorts the other evening. A guy died, so I'm using my rags for shorts for toilet paper. All are actually starving on issue chow. Men are sneaking in weeds from the farm to cook up. Dream of home and food continuously.
Page after page paint a picture of courage and survival in the face of uncertainty and torture.
I think it makes you realize Sherman was right. War is hell.
And the diary wasn't all that Gage uncovered in the investigation into his uncle. He made another discovery while searching for clues in his mother's, that's Lieutenant Humphrey's sister's, attic.
She had 2 small 78 RPM recordings. The Japanese would sometimes take a message that the prisoner had written and broadcast it from Tokyo to the United States. And ham radio operators would pick these up. 2 people had actually recorded it. It was very interesting hearing this female Japanese person read this message about my uncle.
S. Humphrey is 32, Lieutenant of the Army. His home address is 1519 Butler Street, Lone, Thompson. Through the courtesy of the Imperial Japanese Army, I have been extended the privilege of writing to tell you that I'm in very good health and spirits and feel anxiety only for you all at home. I weigh 167 pounds. I've gained 22 pounds since Corregidor fell. Considering everything, our treatment here is very good, so I live in hope for the future. Love, Ernest Humphrey.
It was now over a year since Corregidor had surrendered, and this was the first time they had heard anything. They did not know that he, pardon me, was dead or alive.
Gage has agreed to donate the recordings along with Humphrey's diary, medals, and other wartime mementos to the Eisenhower Presidential Library and Museum in Abilene.
Well, I've been told by historians that World War II is taking on the same aura as the Civil War. And we just think about how important these accounts are going to be, say, 100 years from now.
But as important as they may be in the future, such firsthand accounts from World War II have a growing importance now as the men and women of that generation all pass away. I'm Jim Grayway for Positively Kansas.
The U.S. government says 40% of the American POWs captured after the fall of the Philippines did not survive their captivity. Now to a Wichita man who's diversified his professional life. Dr. Theo Melian has been a highly regarded brain and spine surgeon for decades. And now for the past dozen years, the doctor has taken a second career that has nothing to do with surgery, although sometimes it can be good for what ails you. Anthony Powell has the story.
This shows a herniated disc in the cervical spine on the left side, pinching a nerve.
It's another busy day for Dr. Theo Melian as he takes a brief break from seeing patients at the Kansas Spine and Specialty Hospital on Wichita's east side. As a matter of fact, it's been a very busy life for Melian, who might make you feel a little less worthy when you hear about his many accomplishments.
My goals were always to become a research scientist. And when I finished college, I actually went to graduate school and got a PhD in pharmacology.
Oh, but his academic journey didn't stop there. Melian went on to med school and became a neurosurgeon. The doctor and his family moved several times over the years. Wichita became home in 2004.
Oh, we love it here. My daughter was 2.5 when we moved here, so she's grown up here and still goes to school here at Wichita Collegiate. We've developed a lot of friends here. We've become very active in the community.
Melian says Wichita provides the simple kind of life that is the perfect balance to his very hectic life. Dr. Melian is indeed a very, very ambitious man. As if being a surgeon doesn't keep him busy enough, he also owns another business that's quite different from medicine. It's a business that began with his love of the country of France. You see, many years ago, Dr. Melian began traveling to France, known for, among other things, its wine. Melian had long been a wine connoisseur, so France became like a second home.
I rapidly developed a love for French wines, and so my travel started to incorporate visits to winemakers and restaurants, and that really kind of blossomed into a passion that, I hoped someday would turn into another career.
And in 2006, it did. Despite being very busy with medicine, Melian started a wine import company called Roche-Mer, which translates to Mother Rock. In the complex wine world, the rock that lies beneath the grapevines is said to contribute to a wine's flavor and texture. Melian saw a niche with small family-owned vineyards that didn't have the time or resources to market their wines to America, so that's what his company began doing.
We work with probably close to 30 different winemakers all around France. For some of them, we're the exclusive U.S. importer. They may sell wines in France and Germany and Japan, but we may be the only source of their wines in the U.S.
Now at this point, you're probably thinking, how can somebody be a surgeon, a husband, a father, and run an import business? You're not alone.
It's been a bit of a juggling act.
Melian often travels for the wine business and checks emails early in the morning and between patients. He also has a partner, Michael Murray, who we met in Wichita and who has years of experience in the beverage business. Between the two, they have been able to get their wines in restaurants and liquor stores all over the country, including Wichita.
We have a lot of wines at Chester's Chop House. The Wine Dive has a large number of our wines. The new steakhouse on the west side, Success, carries our wines. Newport, Scotch and Sirloin.
Though he might be a bit biased, Dr. Melian told us why he believes wine is such a special type of drink.
It has so many different faces and it evolves. A wine in its youth is very different than a wine at peak maturity. It develops secondary characteristics and tastes and aromas.
And of course, we had to ask the doctor which he prefers, medicine or the wine business. Both, he says, bring him happiness in their own way. But he did tell us that being known by some patients as the wine doctor can provide for some pretty amusing situations in the normally tense operating room.
People say, oh, have you had a couple of drinks? And I say, oh yeah, I feel great. Yeah, you'll be fine.
I sure was fine when the doctor offered me a sample, which also provided an opportunity to speak the little French I know. Très bien.
Merci.
For Positively Kansas, I'm Anthony Powell.
When he decides to retire from medicine, Dr. Melian says he plans to work full-time in the wine business. The great outdoors is a finely tuned machine with each part dependent upon the others. When something changes, that can have a ripple effect that causes trouble for some, opportunities for others. Mike Blair shows us all about it in this week's Kansas Wild Edge.
The river. It's a dynamic system teeming with life. And through the seasons, it sustains myriad creatures. Water is its lifeblood, and when banks are full, all is well. But a sudden loss of water is catastrophic to the river and its dependents. Rapid drops are seldom seen in nature. But when caused by outside forces, chaos and destruction occur. This was illustrated when a section of the Nenaskaw River was purposely drained to allow repair of an adjacent lake. In less than 12 hours, water levels over several miles dropped nearly 30 inches in the shallow river, forming dry zones, riffles, and shoals. I spent several days learning how this wreaked havoc on fish, muskrats, and other aquatic species, while resulting in a sudden buffet for predators and scavengers. Change came swiftly. Backwaters and sloughs were first impacted, drying and forcing fish to flee. Fish are wired to move upstream against rising water, so the unnatural sudden drop that called for a reverse exit was confusing. As pools dropped and formed rapidly dwindling escape chutes, fish large and small seemed to hesitate, many for too long. As they resisted surfing to deeper water downstream, numbers of them sealed their fates to be trapped in shallows. These largemouth bass, cruising with their backs exposed, waited until the escape route was closed. Smaller bluegills, swimming in schools, tried to exit again and again, but afraid of their only chance, most turned back. Only occasionally would a fish break for deeper water, wriggling and flipping its way to safety. Turtles and frogs moved openly, crawling for cover as the water went down. They had the advantage of breathing air, unlike fish whose gills must stay submerged. So all along the river, some fish big and small were stranded and doomed, many still fighting to get upstream as the water receded. And by nightfall, many lay dead on newly exposed mud. Birds moved in. Local hunters like great blue herons found trapped or dead fish, some partially eaten by raccoons and minks overnight. And they ate at their leisure throughout the day. Ducks and migrating shorebirds traced along the shallows, feeding on aquatic insects, and minnows bunched into smaller waters. Even migrating birds like gulls flying high overhead recognized the unusual hunting grounds and quickly dropped to fill their tanks before moving on. Bullheads, small sunfish, insects, and crawdads were all on the menu. It was a fascinating aftermath to an unnatural disaster. Now, this event will continue for weeks before normal river levels are restored. The water won't dry completely due to upstream springs. The fish that survive in small pools will be at much greater risk, and population levels will plummet for many river species. Today, it is what it is, but one day things will return to normal. I'm Mike Blair for Positively Kansas.
Well, that's a wrap for this week. Email us with your story ideas. PositivelyKansas@kpts.org is the address. I'm Sierra Scott. We'll see you again soon.
Program support provided by the F. Price Kosman Memorial Trust, Entrust Bank trustee, bringing you the Kansas Wild Edge segments on Positively Kansas.
Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Kansas serves more than 930,000 Kansans in various programs. Independent, member-owned. Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Kansas, an independent licensee of Blue Cross and Blue Shield Association, supports KPTS.
Before investing your hard-earned money, make sure your financial advisor understands your objectives. Mark Douglas, CFP, serving our community for over 20 years, providing customized financial solutions that focus on the individual.